Yo, how's it doing? Back in the video, and today I'm going to be talking about how the San Antonio Spurs might be a lot better than a lot of people think right now. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the Spurs are probably off to a much better start than they were really expected to going into the season, coming from pretty much everyone. Now, I was a slightly higher kind of person on the Spurs than a lot of people were that followed the NBA, and that's mainly because I really do support some of the young guys they do have on this roster, but I did not think that they would get off to this good of a start, and I still didn't think they would be a good team. I just thought they would be a little bit better than a lot of people were saying they were going to be, and that has kind of been proven correct so far, and they've kind of gotten a little bit of injury stuff, and they have a really weird thing with Joshua Primo going on that I'll be getting into a little bit in this video. So if that does sound interesting to you, please hit the like button and subscribe button and watch it all the way through. But without further ado, without running on too much, let's get right into this video. So the first thing I want to get for this video is going to be their entire roster actually has a lot of potential in it, and you can really see how high the ceilings for some of their players on this roster that they do have. The two main young guys that they're probably going to build around going into the future is Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson. Both of these players are very, very solid, and they're very underrated, mainly because they play for the San Antonio Spurs, which is a very under-the-radar type team, especially in recent years because they haven't been as successful as they used to be, but they are still both very, very underrated. If you go and look at the Devin Vassell half of them, you would see Devin Vassell was the 11th overall pick in the 2021 draft, and I was very, very high on him coming into the draft, and he, although didn't get the best rookie season, he had a very solid one, and he has improved every year, as in his second season, he was able to average 12 points per game, 1 steal per game, 2 assists per game, and 4 rebounds per game on very solid efficiencies, and there have already shown very significant improvements just this season, and he has looked like a completely better and way more improved player than even his second year, and he is probably going to be around a 20 point per game score this season, and he has looked very, very good. He's a very good two-way player, and if he keeps developing like this and getting better year in, year out, this Spurs team got a very good guard player for them, and I think Devin Vassell is going to be a guard going into the future that's going to stay very solid for them and might develop into one of the better two-way guards in the entire NBA, because any guard that can give you 20 points per game while having a very good lengthy build and being able to play very good defense and doing pretty much everything you want your guard to be able to do, that's exactly what you want from a very, very young player, and that's what they got with the 11th overall pick and Devin Vassell. And then even moving over to another very underrated player on the roster in Keldon Johnson, who was even picked even later, which was 29th overall in the 2019 draft. He has also been one of those players that just works on his game every offseason and improves every single year, and it's just another player to add to that very good track record of the Spurs developing talent and developing players. As a former 29th overall pick, like I said, has improved every single year, and even last year had a very solid year where he averaged 17 points per game, 2 assists per game, 6 rebounds per game on 40% shooting from the 3 and 54% effective field goal percentage, and that is extremely good numbers, and nobody talks about him, and that was only his second year in the NBA, and now that he has a bigger role, now that DeJounte Murray has been traded, he has just been playing even better this year, and he's really just met the call every single step of the way of his career, and now that he's only in year 3, he is once again just very, very fastly improving, and it is very fun to watch how good Keldon Johnson has been. And now this is the part of the video that's going to be a little weird, because when I wrote this video, this was before Joshua Primo was exposed for, well, exposing himself to every woman in the facility. I know the kid's young, but I am 19. I would know better than to show my penis to a whole bunch of female employees where I work. So, I mean, Primo doing this, there's really no excuse for it, and I was going to get into how he's actually been very solid for them this year, but seeing that they just released him, that part of the video is no longer valid, so I just wanted to kind of get into that. But Primo was another player in their list that looked like he was going to join the developmental players that was actually developing at a good rate, but now that this whole situation's here, that's no longer a thing, so Devin Vassell's Joshua Primo is out of the picture, and now let's move on to the next young guy, and that is going to be this year's 9th overall pick, Jeremy Sochan. Now, although I was not very high on Jeremy at all going in the draft, and I think that they did pass up on a few other good players in this draft to pick him, he is still going to be very solid, and with how good the Spurs are at developing talent, I wouldn't put it past them to actually help his offensive game a lot, as that was the biggest knock on Sochan. He was one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in this draft class. He's very smart, very big, very athletic, and he's just a very good defender, but his offensive game struggled immensely. And in my opinion, his teammate Kendall Brown was actually better in Baylor, but Sochan was just seen to have a higher floor, a higher potential, I guess. So Sochan did go with the 9th overall pick, and although he has had some very solid games this year with the Spurs, and I think he's probably averaging around 8 points per game while being a very good defender, so he's not having a bad rookie year, at least a start to his rookie year at all, but I just think that they did pass up on a few players, but with how good they are at developing talent, I'm sure Sochan will develop into a very solid player for them, and I'm sure he will fit with what the Spurs wanted and see him going into the future. And now for the last young guy on this roster that I want to get into is going to be this year's 20th pick, Malachi Branham. Now, Malachi Branham is actually a guy I was pretty high on, and I think that they did get him at very good value with the 20th overall pick. He is a 6'5" wing that I'm sure a lot of you have not heard about, but he was very solid in college. He can make his own shot. He hasn't really got any opportunities with the Spurs, but now with his whole Primo situation, he might get a little bit of playing time, and I think Malachi Branham, after having a very good summer league and a very solid preseason, he's probably going to be getting a little bit of run here very soon, and I think he is going to be a very solid player for them, and they're going to develop him into a very nice player. He can be a very solid defender, he has good athleticism, he can handle the ball, and he can make his own shot pretty much from everywhere on the court, all while being 6'5" with good length. So I think for sure in the long run, he is going to develop into a very solid player for the Spurs, and as a young core that they do have, I do think if they develop him right and keep them on the right path and can keep him in the organization, the Spurs have built a very nice foundation to build around and to keep building up from here, and I think in a few years, they're going to be a very, very fun team to watch, and I already do think that they're a very fun team to watch, even as they are built right now. And now the second thing I want to give for this video is going to be that the Spurs have a very clear direction, and that is not something you can say for every organization that is in this kind of weird middle ground area as a team. You're not awful to the point to where you're going to be losing every game, and you're not good enough to be really considered a locked in for a play-in or playoff spot either. They're kind of this middle ground where they want to compete, but they don't know if they're good enough to even compete for one, so they might want to tank, and they really don't know what they want to do. But the Spurs are not in that situation. They have a very clear roadmap of what they need to do and what they want to do. As the Spurs, like I said earlier, they have a very nice young core, and they have been a team that have greatly prided themselves on internal development and really having success with the players they draft, and you can see that going as far back to when they had Tim Duncan, Duncan Robinson, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. All these players were drafted and internally developed into the players they ultimately became, and I think that is what they still want to do, and they're kind of in position to do that, as they have two potential stars in Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell on their team, and yes, they just had to trade DeJounte Murray, who is an all-star level player, which is unfortunate, but that was really beyond their control, but that was still another player that would have fit this exact mold. But as of right now, they have two potential future stars on their roster. They have an elite defender and maybe even an elite two-way player in the long run in Jeremy Sochan on the roster, who is very young, and then you add a solid center like Jakob Poeltl, great role players like Josh Richardson and Trey Jones, and they have a very clear roadmap of where you want to go. They have young guys that they can develop into role players like Branham and all those players. They have solid veterans on the roster, Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, Trey Jones, and then even their young stars maybe can blossom even quicker now that they have a way bigger opportunity and way more responsibility on their shoulders with DeJounte Murray gone. So I think for sure that the Spurs know what they want to do. They know they want to internally develop players. They're going to keep drafting well. They're going to keep developing well. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Spurs navigate this season and seasons going forward. And I think these are all reasons that contribute to the San Antonio Spurs being a lot better than most people actually think. But unfortunately, guys, that's my review. So comment below, do you agree with me? Do you think that the San Antonio Spurs could be better than a lot of people think? What do you think they should do? How good do you think some of the players on their roster can be in the long run? I want your thoughts in the comment section below. If you feel like being on point, hit the like button, subscribe button, mean the absolute word to me, and I hope you have a blessed day. Have a blessed day, so you have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah, blah.